Kim Dae-ho wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the broken drill bit in his hand. This was the third one he had broken today, and the sun was already setting behind the mountains that surrounded his small workshop. He had been trying to dig holes for new foundation supports all week, but the ground beneath his workshop seemed harder than normal concrete. Dae-ho owned a small machine repair shop in the countryside outside Seoul. He fixed engines, built custom parts, and helped local farmers maintain their equipment. At 34 years old, he lived alone and liked the quiet life. But lately, he felt like something was missing. Every day felt the same, and he wondered if there was more to life than fixing broken machines. He picked up a new drill bit and attached it to his machine. This time, he would drill slower and be more careful. The hole needed to be exactly 2 meters deep to support the new expansion he was planning. His business was growing, and he needed more space for larger equipment. The drill started spinning, and Dae-ho guided it into the small hole he had already started. The bit cut through the hard ground inch by inch. Everything seemed normal until he reached about 1.5 meters deep. Suddenly, the drill jerked in his hands and broke through into empty space. Dae-ho turned off the machine and pulled out the drill. He grabbed a flashlight and pointed it down the hole. Instead of seeing dirt or rock at the bottom, the light disappeared into darkness. There was definitely a hollow space down there. He found a long metal rod and dropped it into the hole. Instead of hitting dirt, it made a clear ringing sound when it hit something solid. It sounded like metal. Dae-ho frowned. There should not be any metal structures buried under his workshop. This land had been empty farmland for decades before he bought it. Curiosity got the better of him. Dae-ho made the hole wider with his drill and then used a shovel to clear away the loose dirt. After an hour of digging, he could see something unusual below. It was definitely metal, but it looked strange. The surface was perfectly smooth and had an odd dark color that seemed to change when he moved his flashlight. He dug more carefully around the edges and discovered what looked like a large metal panel. As he cleared away more dirt, he found the edges of what appeared to be a square hatch about 2 meters wide. The metal was unlike anything he had ever seen. It did not rust, and when he touched it, the metal felt neither hot nor cold. It was exactly the same temperature as his hand. Dae-ho examined the hatch more closely. There were strange patterns carved into the surface. At first, they looked like simple geometric designs, but when he stared at them, they seemed to move and shift. He rubbed his eyes, thinking he was tired, but the patterns continued to change. He tried to find a way to open the hatch. There was no obvious handle or lock, just the smooth metal surface with the moving patterns. On impulse, he placed his palm flat against the center of the hatch. The moment his skin touched the metal, everything changed. The patterns began to glow with a soft blue light, and he felt a strange tingling sensation in his hand. The glow spread outward from where he touched, following the lines of the patterns until the entire hatch was glowing. Then, with a soft hissing sound, the hatch began to open. It split into 4 triangular sections that folded back into the ground, revealing a square opening. Cool air flowed up from below, carrying a strange smell that reminded him of clean metal and something else he could not identify. Dae-ho pointed his flashlight down into the opening. Below the hatch was a smooth corridor that appeared to be made of the same strange metal as the hatch. The walls and ceiling glowed with the same soft blue light, providing plenty of illumination. The corridor stretched away into the distance further than his flashlight could reach. He knew he should probably call someone. The police maybe, or the government. Finding an underground structure like this was definitely unusual, but something stopped him. He felt drawn to explore it himself first. Besides, who would believe him? An underground corridor with glowing walls that opened to his touch? It sounded crazy even to him. Dae-ho went back to his workshop and gathered some supplies. He filled a backpack with water, some food, a stronger flashlight, his phone, and some basic tools. He also wrote a quick note explaining what he had found and left it on his workbench, just in case something happened to him. Standing at the edge of the opening, Dae-ho hesitated. The rational part of his mind told him this was dangerous. He had no idea what was down there or how deep the corridor went. But the curious part of his mind, the part that had always driven him to take apart machines to see how they worked, was stronger. He lowered himself into the opening. His feet touched solid ground and he found himself standing in the corridor. The ceiling was about 3 meters high and the walls were perfectly smooth. The blue glow came from panels embedded in the walls and ceiling, providing even light throughout the space. Dae-ho started walking down the corridor. His footsteps echoed softly off the walls. The corridor was perfectly straight and seemed to continue forever. As he walked, he noticed that new light panels activated ahead of him while the ones behind him dimmed. It was as if the corridor knew where he was and lit his path automatically. After walking for about 10 minutes, the corridor began to slope downward. Deho estimated he was now at least 50 meters underground, much deeper than any basement or subway tunnel he knew of. The construction was incredible. The walls showed no signs of joints or seams, as if the entire corridor had been carved from a single piece of metal. He continued walking for another 20 minutes before the corridor finally ended at a large circular chamber. The room was enormous, at least 100 meters across, with a domed ceiling that rose high above. Like the corridor, the walls glowed with soft light, but here the light was brighter and had different colors. Blue, white, and pale green lights created patterns across the curved walls. In the center of the chamber stood a raised platform with what looked like a control panel. The panel had a smooth surface covered with symbols that resembled the patterns from the hatch, but more complex. As Deho approached, the symbols began to glow brighter. Around the edges of the chamber, he could see several other corridors leading away into darkness. This place was much larger than just a single room and corridor. It was an entire complex, hidden beneath the Korean countryside. Deho walked up to the central platform. The control panel was at the perfect height for him to use comfortably, as if it had been designed for someone of his size. The symbols on the surface were beautiful and hypnotic, constantly shifting and changing like living things. He reached out to touch the panel, then stopped. Opening the hatch had already led him into this incredible discovery. What would happen if he activated whatever this was? But he had come this far, and turning back now seemed impossible. Deho placed his hand on the control panel. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. The entire chamber filled with bright light, and he heard a sound like rushing wind. Then, impossible as it seemed, a voice spoke to him in perfect Korean. "Welcome, human. We have been waiting for you for a very long time." Deho jumped back from the control panel, his heart pounding. The voice had come from everywhere at once, as if the walls themselves were speaking. He looked around the chamber frantically but saw no one. "Do not be afraid," the voice said again. It sounded calm and patient, like a teacher speaking to a student. "I am not a physical being. I am what you might call an artificial intelligence. My name is Keeper Voss 9. Who are you?" "What is this place?" Deho asked, surprised that his voice remained steady despite his fear. "I am the guardian of this facility," Voss 9 replied. "I have maintained it for over 50,000 of your years, waiting for the right moment. This is a proving ground, one of many scattered across the galaxy on worlds where promising species evolve." Deho felt dizzy. "Galaxy species? What are you talking about?" "Please sit down," Voss 9 said gently. A chair rose from the floor behind Deho, perfectly sized for his body. "What I'm about to tell you will be difficult to understand, but it is important that you know the truth." Deho sat down carefully. The chair was comfortable and seemed to adjust itself to support him perfectly. "I'm listening." "Your species, humans, are not alone in the universe," Voss 9 began. "The galaxy contains thousands of intelligent species, but most never develop beyond primitive tools. Only a few reach the level where they can travel between stars and truly think about their place in the universe." The walls of the chamber began to show images as Voss 9 spoke. Deho saw pictures of strange worlds with purple skies, creatures that looked like walking crystals, and beings made of what appeared to be living metal. "These advanced species are divided into two main groups," Voss 9 continued. "They have been at war for longer than human civilization has existed. The first group calls itself the Collective. They believe that all intelligent life should be united into a single shared consciousness, where every individual mind becomes part of a greater whole. They think this is the only way to achieve true peace and progress." The images showed vast cities where millions of beings moved in perfect coordination, their eyes glowing with the same light. It was beautiful but somehow disturbing. "The second group is the Sovereign Alliance," Voss 9 said. "They believe that individual freedom and diversity are the most important things in the universe. They fight to preserve the right of each species to develop in its own way, even if it leads to conflict and suffering." New images appeared showing different worlds where various species lived separately, some peaceful and some engaged in terrible wars. "Both sides believe they are right," Voss 9 explained, "and both sides seek new species that might help them win the war. That is why facilities like this one exist. We test promising species to see which side they might join, or if they have something new to offer. Deho tried to process what he was hearing. But why here? Why under my workshop? The location was not chosen randomly, Voss 9 replied. This facility was built here because our instruments detected something special about this region. More importantly, it was built to test humans specifically. What do you mean specifically? Voss 9 paused before answering. Humans were not a natural accident, Deho. Your species was designed. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the lights. Deho stared at the shifting patterns on the walls, trying to understand. Long ago there was a third group, Voss 9 continued. They called themselves the Architects. They were older and wiser than either the Collective or the Sovereign Alliance. They saw that the war between the two sides was destroying the galaxy, but they also realized that neither side could win, because both were trapped by their own extreme beliefs. What happened to them? They sacrificed themselves to create a solution. The Architects spent thousands of years studying both sides of the conflict, learning everything about how different species think and develop. Then they designed the perfect mediator species, one that could understand both unity and freedom, cooperation and independence. Deho felt a chill run down his spine. Humans. Yes, the Architects seeded your world with the genetic patterns they had designed. They guided your early evolution subtly, ensuring that humans would develop the exact combination of traits needed. Your species is uniquely capable of working together when necessary, while still maintaining individual identity and freedom of thought. The images on the walls now showed early human history. Deho saw cave paintings, ancient cities, and the gradual development of human civilization. Think about your history, Voss 9 said. Humans have always been tribal, forming groups for mutual protection and benefit. But unlike species that develop hive minds, humans never lose their individual personalities. You argue and disagree, but you also cooperate when facing common threats. You create diverse cultures and beliefs, but you can still communicate and work together. Deho thought about his own life. He worked alone in his workshop, preferring independence, but he also helped his neighbors and maintained friendships. When problems arose, people in his community came together to solve them, then went back to their individual lives. The Architects believed that when humans reached the right level of development, they could offer something new to the galaxy. Voss 9 continued. Not forced unity like the Collective and not endless conflict like the Sovereign Alliance, but a third option that neither side had considered. But why now? Why is this happening to me? Because humanity has reached the threshold, Voss 9 explained. Your species has developed space travel, global communication, and the beginnings of genetic engineering. More importantly, you are facing challenges that will determine your future path. Climate change, resource depletion, political divisions. How you handle these challenges will show whether you are ready for your true purpose. Which is what exactly? To end the war, Voss 9 said simply. To show both sides that there is a better way. But first you must prove that humans truly have the qualities the Architects designed. You must pass the tests. Tests? This facility contains a series of challenges designed to evaluate different aspects of human potential. Engineering, biology, leadership, cooperation, innovation. But Deho, these tests are not just for you. The facility activated because your entire species is being evaluated. What happens here will determine humanity's future in the galaxy. Deho stood up, feeling overwhelmed. I'm just a mechanic. I fix engines and build parts. I'm not qualified to represent all of humanity. The Architects knew that the right humans would find these facilities when the time was right, Voss 9 replied. You were not chosen randomly. Your combination of technical skill, problem-solving ability, and character brought you here. But you are also correct that this is too much for one person. What do you mean? Humans work best in groups. The tests are designed for a team. You will need to call others to help you. Choose wisely, Deho. The people you bring here will represent your species to the galaxy. Deho thought immediately of his sister Sojin, who worked as a scientist in Seoul, and his old friend Minho, who had served in the military before becoming a security consultant. They were the two people he trusted most in the world. If I fail these tests, what happens? If humans prove to be unsuitable mediators, both the Collective and the Sovereign Alliance will seek to recruit your species for their own purposes, Voss 9 explained. The Collective will offer to absorb humanity into their shared consciousness, promising peace and prosperity. The Sovereign Alliance will offer technology and protection in exchange for military service. Either path will mean the end of human independence. And if we succeed, then humans will have the chance to fulfill their true purpose. To bring peace to a galaxy that has known only war for millennia. To show that unity and freedom are not opposites but can exist together. Daeho walked to the edge of the platform and looked out at the enormous chamber. Hidden beneath his simple workshop was technology beyond his understanding, and somehow the fate of humanity rested on what happened in this place. "How long do we have?" he asked. "The facility's activation has already been detected by both sides," Voss 9 replied. "They will send representatives to investigate within days. You must complete the tests before they arrive, or the choice will be taken from humanity entirely." Daeho pulled out his phone and was surprised to see that it had a signal, even this far underground. "Then I'd better make some calls." Daeho sat in the chamber for several minutes staring at his phone. How could he possibly explain this to anyone? His sister Sojin was a practical scientist who dealt with facts and evidence. His friend Minho was a former soldier who had seen enough impossible things in his military service to be more open-minded. But even Minho might think Daeho had lost his mind. He decided to call Sojin first. She answered on the third ring. "Daeho, it's late. Is everything okay?" "Sojin, I need you to come to my workshop immediately. And I need you to bring Minho with you." "What's wrong? You sound strange." Daeho took a deep breath. "I found something under my workshop. Something impossible. I can't explain it over the phone, but I need both of you here now. It's important. More important than anything else in your life." There was silence on the other end. Sojin knew her brother well enough to recognize when he was serious. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll call Minho and we'll drive out tonight. But Daeho, if this is some kind of joke..." "It's not a joke," Daeho said. "Trust me." 2 hours later, Daeho heard vehicles pulling up outside his workshop. He climbed out of the underground facility and found Sojin and Minho standing beside their cars, looking confused and worried. Sojin was 31 years old, 3 years younger than Daeho. She worked as a research biologist at Seoul National University, specializing in genetics and disease research. She was small and energetic, with short hair and glasses that made her look even younger than she was. Minho was the same age as Daeho. They had been friends since childhood, but Minho had joined the military after high school while Daeho went to engineering school. Minho had served in special forces for 10 years before leaving to start his own security consulting business. He was tall and muscular, with the careful alertness of someone trained to expect trouble. "Daeho, what's going on?" Sojin demanded. "You call us in the middle of the night and tell us to drop everything and drive out here. And why is there a hole in your workshop floor?" "Follow me," Daeho said simply, "and try to keep an open mind." He led them to the opening and climbed down into the corridor. After a moment of hesitation, Sojin and Minho followed. Both of them gasped when they saw the glowing walls and the perfect construction of the tunnel. "What is this place?" Minho asked, his hand instinctively moving to where he would normally carry a weapon. "Just wait," Daeho said. "It gets more interesting." He led them down the corridor to the central chamber. When they emerged into the vast space, both Sojin and Minho stopped walking and stared. "This is impossible," Sojin whispered. "The engineering alone. This would require technology we don't have." "Welcome," Voss 9's voice said, causing both newcomers to jump. "I am Keeper Voss 9, thank you for coming. Who is that?" "Where is the voice coming from?" Minho demanded, looking around for hidden speakers. Daeho gestured toward the control panel. "This is going to sound crazy, but that's an artificial intelligence. He's been waiting here for 50,000 years to test humanity." For the next hour, Daeho and Voss 9 explained everything to Sojin and Minho. The alien factions, the war, the architects, and humanity's designed purpose. Sojin asked dozens of technical questions, while Minho focused on the strategic implications. "So you're saying that aliens have been manipulating human evolution for thousands of years?" Sojin asked. "Not manipulating," Voss 9 corrected. "Guiding. The architects provided the initial genetic framework, but humans developed naturally from there. Your creativity, your diverse cultures, your individual personalities, all of that is genuinely human. And now we have to take tests to prove we're worthy," Minho said. "What kind of tests?" "Tests designed to evaluate the qualities that make humans unique," Voss 9 replied. The first test is for Daiho. It will evaluate human technical innovation and problem-solving ability. The chamber changed around them. The walls shifted and rearranged themselves, creating a new space filled with what appeared to be a damaged spacecraft engine. The engine was enormous, at least 10 meters long and clearly broken. Parts lay scattered around it, some clearly alien in design. This engine powers a vessel capable of traveling between stars, Voss 9 explained. It has been damaged and requires repair. You have 6 hours to restore it to working condition using only the tools and materials provided. Daiho examined the engine carefully. The basic principles seemed similar to engines he knew, but the technology was far more advanced. The parts were made of materials he had never seen, and some components seemed to use energy fields instead of physical connections. I've never seen anything like this, he admitted. That is the point, Voss 9 said. Other species who have taken this test approach it by trying to restore the engine to its original specifications. Most fail because they cannot understand the advanced technology. The test is not about knowledge, but about innovation. Daiho began sorting through the available parts and tools. Many were clearly alien, but others looked surprisingly familiar. There were hammers, wrenches, and cutting tools that seemed designed for human hands. Sojin, can you help me understand what these biological components do? Daiho asked, pointing to some parts that looked almost alive. Minho, you're good with electronics. Can you figure out these control systems? The three Koreans worked together, combining their different skills. Daiho's mechanical expertise, Sojin's understanding of biological systems, and Minho's knowledge of electronics and computers. They discovered that the engine used a combination of traditional mechanical systems and biological components that grew and adapted to changing conditions. Instead of trying to repair the engine exactly as it had been, they began modifying it. Daiho used techniques from his workshop experience, creating custom brackets and connections. Sojin found ways to help the biological components grow faster and stronger. Minho reprogrammed the control systems to be more efficient. When they finished, the engine looked different from how it had started. It was smaller, more efficient, and incorporated several completely new design elements. Fascinating, Voss 9 said as the engine powered up successfully. You have not only repaired the engine, you have improved it. The efficiency has increased by 23%. This is exactly the kind of innovation the architects hoped for. The second test was for Sojin. The chamber reconfigured again, this time creating what looked like a medical facility. Displays showed information about a disease outbreak affecting multiple alien species. A plague is spreading through a space station containing 12 different species, Voss 9 explained. You must develop a treatment protocol. The traditional approach is to choose which species to save, since creating individual treatments for all 12 would require too much time and resources. So, Jin studied the information carefully. Each species had completely different biology, from silicon-based beings to creatures made of living gas. A treatment that worked for one would be useless or even harmful for another. I'm not choosing, Sojin said firmly. There has to be a way to save everyone. She worked for hours, developing a completely new approach. Instead of creating individual treatments, she designed an adaptive treatment system that could modify itself based on each patient's biology. It was like creating a smart medicine that could learn and change. Remarkable, Voss 9 said when she succeeded. No species before humans has even attempted to save all 12. Most see it as an impossible waste of resources. The third test was for Minho. The chamber became a battlefield simulation where he had to command a mixed group of alien soldiers against a much larger enemy force, and the traditional approach is to use superior tactics and discipline to overcome the numerical disadvantage, Voss 9 explained. Minho studied the situation. His simulated alien soldiers were all different species with different abilities and ways of thinking. Instead of treating them like human soldiers, he spent time learning what motivated each species and how they preferred to fight. Rather than rigid military tactics, Minho used guerrilla warfare, deception, and most importantly, he inspired his diverse troops to fight for each other, rather than just follow orders. He turned the enemy's numbers against them by making them fight in small groups where his soldiers' diversity became an advantage. Another completely unexpected approach, Voss 9 observed as Minho achieved victory. You have turned a group of individuals into a unified force without destroying their individual natures. When all three tests were complete, the chamber returned to its original configuration. The three humans stood together on the central platform, exhausted but proud of what they had accomplished. "You have demonstrated the qualities the architects hoped for," Voss 9 said. "Innovation over tradition, cooperation over competition, inclusion over exclusion. But there is one more test, and it is the most important of all." "What is it?" Deho asked. "The fourth test has already begun," Voss 9 replied. "It is the test of working together. Other species typically send their single greatest individual to these facilities. Humans instinctively brought companions and worked as a team. This cooperation, without losing individual identity, is what makes your species unique." Suddenly, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. The lights flashed red, and Voss 9's voice became urgent. "The representatives from both factions have arrived. They are descending to the facility now. The time for tests is over. Now comes the real challenge." The chamber filled with new light as two openings appeared in the walls that had not been there before. From each opening came beings unlike anything the three humans had ever imagined. From the left opening emerged a tall, graceful figure that seemed to be made of flowing silver light. It moved without walking, gliding across the floor like liquid mercury. When it spoke, its voice was like music, beautiful and hypnotic. "I am Commander Telak of the Collective," it said. "We have monitored your progress through the trials with great interest." From the right opening came a creature that looked like it was carved from living crystal. It was roughly human-shaped but larger, with faceted surfaces that reflected the chamber's lights in brilliant patterns. When it moved, it made soft chiming sounds like wind chimes. "I am Admiral Kess of the Sovereign Alliance," it announced in a voice that rang like struck metal. "Your species shows remarkable potential." Deho, Sojin, and Minho moved closer together instinctively. Despite their different appearances, both aliens radiated power and intelligence that made the humans feel very small. "Voss 9, Commander Telek said. "You may step aside now. We will take over from here." "I am afraid that is not possible," Voss 9 replied calmly. "The trials are complete, but the humans have not yet made their choice. According to the architect's protocols, they must hear both offers and decide freely." Admiral Kess made a sound like breaking glass that might have been laughter. "Choice? These primitives are not capable of understanding what they would be choosing between. Look at them. They still use crude tools and burn fossil fuels for energy." "That is exactly why they are perfect for us," Commander Telak said smoothly. "They are young and can be guided toward true enlightenment. Humans, listen to me. We offer you a place in the collective where you will know true peace and purpose." The chamber around them changed, showing images of the collective's worlds. Beautiful cities stretched endlessly, with millions of beings moving in perfect harmony. There was no conflict, no suffering, no want. Everyone worked together with complete understanding and cooperation. "In the collective, you will never be alone," Commander Telek continued. "Your individual consciousness will join with billions of others, sharing all knowledge and experience. You will have access to technology beyond your current understanding. Disease, aging, and death will become things of the past. All of humanity's problems will be solved." So Jin stepped forward. "What happens to our individual minds? Our personalities? They become part of something greater," Commander Telak replied. "You will not lose yourselves, you will expand yourselves. Instead of being limited by your single perspective, you will see through countless eyes and think with the wisdom of entire civilizations." "That's not expansion, that's absorption," Minho said firmly. "You're talking about erasing what makes us human." Admiral Kess stepped forward, its crystal body flashing with bright colors. "Which is exactly why you should join the Sovereign Alliance instead. We preserve the independence and uniqueness of every species. We fight to protect diversity against those who would force uniformity upon the galaxy." New images appeared, showing worlds where different species lived according to their own natures. Some were peaceful, others were warlike, but all were free to choose their own paths. "The Alliance offers partnership, not absorption," Admiral Kess explained. "You would maintain your human culture, your individual thoughts, your freedom to make your own decisions. In return, we ask only that you help us defend freedom against the collective's tyranny." "What kind of help?" Deho asked. "Military service primarily," Admiral Kess admitted. "Humans have shown remarkable adaptability and innovation in combat. Your species would make excellent soldiers in our fight against forced unification. So our choice is between losing our individuality or spending eternity at war," Sojin said. "These are the only two paths available," Commander Telek said. "Unity or chaos. Peace or conflict. You must choose. Deho looked at his sister and his friend. They had worked together to solve problems that had stumped other species. They had found ways to save everyone instead of choosing who to sacrifice. They had turned diversity into strength instead of weakness. No, he said quietly. Both aliens turned to stare at him. What did you say? Admiral Kess demanded. I said no, Deho repeated louder this time. We reject both choices. That is not possible, Commander Telek said, its musical voice showing irritation for the first time. You must choose. These are the only options. According to you, Minho said, moving to stand beside Deho. But humans don't accept impossible situations. We find third options. You cannot simply ignore reality, Admiral Kess said. The galaxy is divided. You must pick a side. The galaxy is divided because everyone thinks there are only two sides, Sojin said, joining her brother and their friend. But what if you're both wrong? Explain, Voss 9 said, and the humans could hear interest in the AI's voice. Deho took a deep breath. You both want the same thing, really? You want peace and prosperity for all intelligent life. The collective thinks the only way to achieve that is through unity. The Alliance thinks the only way is through freedom. But humans know that both unity and freedom are necessary. Impossible, Commander Telek said. You cannot have both complete unity and complete freedom. You're thinking in absolutes, Sojin explained. In biology, we call this symbiosis. Different organisms working together for mutual benefit, while maintaining their individual natures. Each species contributes what it does best while receiving what it needs from others. In military terms, it's coalition warfare, Minho added. Different armies with different strengths working together toward a common goal. They don't have to become the same army to fight together effectively. We propose something new, Deho said. A system where species can choose to work together on specific problems while maintaining their independence. Voluntary cooperation instead of forced unity or endless conflict. The synthesis protocol, Voss 9 said suddenly. That is what the architects hoped you would propose. The chamber filled with new images showing a different kind of galaxy. Species maintained their unique cultures and homeworlds, but they came together to share knowledge, resources, and effort when facing common challenges. It was like a vast democracy where every voice mattered, but no one was forced to participate. Individual species would handle their own internal affairs, Deho explained. But when faced with problems that affect everyone, like diseases, natural disasters, or resource shortages, they would work together voluntarily. No one would be forced to join, and anyone could leave if they disagreed. What about conflicts between species? Admiral Kess asked. Mediation by neutral parties, Minho replied. Humans would be perfect for this role since we're designed to see both sides of any issue. We could help resolve disputes without forcing anyone to surrender their beliefs. And what about coordination on a galactic scale? Commander Telek asked. Temporary shared consciousness for specific tasks, Sojin suggested. Instead of permanent mental unity, species could choose to link their minds briefly when working on complex problems that require perfect coordination. It's like the collective's unity, but voluntary and limited in scope. Both aliens were quiet for a long time, processing this new idea. Finally, Commander Telek spoke. This proposal addresses our core concerns about preserving the benefits of unity while maintaining individual identity, it admitted, and it provides a framework for cooperation without surrendering sovereignty, Admiral Kess added. Grudgingly, the architects designed humans to think beyond the limitations that have trapped us for millennia, Voss 9 explained. Your proposal offers something that neither faction achieved in 50,000 years of conflict. Actual progress toward a solution. But how would we test such a system? Commander Telek asked. Start small, Deho suggested. A few worlds from each faction volunteer to try the synthesis protocol. Humans serve as neutral mediators. If it works, others can join. If it fails, we go back to the current system. And if it succeeds? Admiral Kess asked. Then maybe the galaxy can finally know real peace, Sojin said. Not the peace of forced unity or the peace of exhausted enemies, but the peace of willing cooperation. The two aliens looked at each other across the chamber. For the first time in millennia, representatives of the collective and the sovereign alliance were considering the possibility that there might be a better way. This proposal has merit, Commander Telek said slowly. We would need to discuss it with our leadership. As would we, Admiral Kess agreed. But perhaps Perhaps it is time to try something new. Then you will declare a ceasefire? Deho asked. A temporary one while we evaluate your proposal, Commander Telak confirmed. And humans will serve as neutral mediators for the pilot program? Admiral Kess asked. If that's what it takes to end this war, then yes, Minho replied, as the two aliens prepared to leave. Voss 9 spoke one final time. The architects would be proud, the AI said. Humanity has fulfilled its purpose. You have offered the galaxy something it has never had before, hope. 6 months later, Deho stood in what used to be a simple workshop and marveled at how much had changed. The small building had been expanded into a sprawling complex that served as the headquarters for the Galactic Synthesis Council. Where once he had repaired farm equipment, now humans and aliens worked together on projects that would benefit entire star systems. The news that humanity was not alone in the universe had shocked the world. Governments had panicked, religions had struggled to adapt, and ordinary people had reacted with everything from terror to excitement. But as the truth about humanity's designed purpose became known, most people had felt a strange sense of pride and destiny. Deho had been appointed as Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Synthesis Council. It was a job he had never wanted and still felt unqualified for. But Voss 9 had insisted that the person who discovered the facility should help guide humanity's role in the galaxy. His engineering background turned out to be perfect for the job of building bridges between different civilizations. Ambassador, the morning briefing is ready, said Jin Ai, his human assistant. She was a former diplomat who helped him navigate the complex politics of interspecies relations. Thank you, Deho replied, straightening his simple business suit. He had refused the elaborate robes that other galactic dignitaries wore, preferring to represent humanity in ordinary human clothing. The briefing room was filled with beings from 12 different species, all representatives from worlds that had volunteered for the Synthesis Protocol pilot program. Commander Telak was there, its silver form shimmering in the morning light. Admiral Kess sat nearby, its crystal body creating rainbow patterns on the walls. After months of working together, Deho had learned to read their alien expressions and had come to respect both of them. What's our status report today? Deho asked as he took his seat at the head of the curved table. Dr. Yoon, a collective representative from a species that looked like walking plants, spoke first. The joint agricultural project on Kepler 442b is exceeding expectations. By sharing farming techniques from 6 different species, crop yields have increased by 400%. The asteroid mining operation in the Vega system is also successful, added Captain Rex, a Sovereign Alliance member whose people resembled large insects. The voluntary coordination protocols allowed us to extract resources 30% faster than any single species could manage alone. So Jin, who now headed the Biological Adaptation Committee, delivered her report next. We've successfully helped 3 silicon-based species and 2 carbon-based species establish shared colonies on Proxima Centauri C. The environmental adaptation systems are working perfectly, and both groups are maintaining their distinct cultures while sharing the planet's resources. Minho, who commanded the Synthesis Guard, gave the security report. No major conflicts this week. We resolved 2 minor trade disputes through mediation, and the early warning system prevented a territorial misunderstanding between the Korthak and the Zendai before it could escalate. Any word from the home factions? Deho asked. Commander Telak spoke carefully. The collective leadership is intrigued by our progress. Many are beginning to see that cooperation does not require the loss of individual identity. There is talk of offering the synthesis protocol to other collective worlds. Admiral Kess made its chiming sound of approval. The Sovereign Alliance is similarly impressed. The ability to work together without surrendering sovereignty appeals to many of our member species. We expect more worlds to volunteer for the program soon. Deho nodded, feeling a cautious optimism. The pilot program was working better than anyone had dared to hope. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years were learning to trust each other. Problems that had seemed impossible when approached by single civilizations were being solved through cooperative effort. But not everyone was happy with the changes. Some humans struggled with the knowledge that their evolution had been guided by aliens. Religious leaders debated whether the architects had been divine agents or cosmic manipulators. Conspiracy theorists claimed that the whole thing was a trick to make humanity vulnerable to alien invasion. More seriously, hardliners in both the Collective and the Sovereign Alliance saw the Synthesis Protocol as a threat to their fundamental beliefs. Several attempts had been made to sabotage the pilot worlds, and Minho's security forces had to remain constantly vigilant. "There's something else we need to discuss," Sojin said, her expression serious. "The latest reports from the deep space monitoring stations." She activated a holographic display that showed a map of the local galaxy. Red markers indicated areas where the old war between the Collective and the Sovereign Alliance was still raging. "The conflict hasn't stopped," she explained. "It's only paused in the regions participating in the Synthesis Protocol. Outside our pilot area, the fighting continues. Some factions on both sides see our success as proof that their enemies are becoming weak," Minho added grimly. "They're escalating their attacks, trying to win the war before the peace movement can spread." Daeho studied the display with growing concern. The galaxy was still torn apart by conflict, and their small island of cooperation was surrounded by an ocean of war. "What are our options?" he asked. "We could expand the pilot program faster," Commander Telok suggested. "Recruit more worlds before the extremists can react. Or we could focus on protecting what we've already built," Admiral Kess countered. "Ensure our current successes survive before attempting to grow." "Both approaches have merit," Voss 9's voice said from the chamber's speakers. The ancient AI had become an informal advisor to the Council, offering the wisdom of 50,000 years of observation. Daeho stood and walked to the large window that looked out over the Korean countryside. In the distance, he could see the construction site where a new spaceport was being built. Ships from a dozen different worlds would soon be landing there regularly, bringing aliens who wanted to learn about the human approach to cooperation. "We're going to do something that might seem crazy," he said finally. "We're going to be more human." The room fell silent as everyone waited for him to explain. "The Collective thinks the answer to conflict is more control," Daeho continued. "The Sovereign Alliance thinks the answer is more independence. But humans know that sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to accept that you can't control the outcome." He turned back to face the assembly. "We're going to send small groups of volunteers to the war zones, not to fight but to offer an alternative. Every time the extremists destroy something, we'll help rebuild it. Every time they spread hate, we'll spread hope. Every time they say there are only two choices, we'll show there's a third option." "That's incredibly dangerous," Minho said. "These volunteers could be killed." "Yes, they could," Daeho agreed. "But that's what makes it human. We don't just talk about our beliefs, we risk our lives for them. And we don't force others to join us. We invite them." Sojin smiled, understanding her brother's plan. "It's like a virus of cooperation. Instead of spreading through force or coercion, it spreads through example and invitation." "The extremists can destroy our ships and kill our volunteers," Daeho said. "But they can't destroy an idea whose time has come. And every world that sees what we're offering will have to make a choice. Not the old choice between the Collective and the Alliance, but a new choice between war and peace." Commander Telok's form shimmered with what Daeho had learned was excitement. This approach could work. It leverages humanity's greatest strength, the ability to inspire others through personal sacrifice and genuine altruism. "It's definitely human," Admiral Kess agreed, its crystal body flashing with bright colors. "Completely illogical and impossibly optimistic, which is exactly why it might succeed where logical approaches have failed." Over the following weeks, volunteers from dozens of species signed up for the new mission. They called themselves the Synthesis Ambassadors, and their ships carried no weapons, only supplies for reconstruction and aid. Their message was simple: we offer a better way. Many of the volunteers were killed by extremists who saw them as a threat. But for every ship destroyed, 2 more species asked to join the program. For every ambassador who died, 10 more volunteered to take their place. Daeho stood once again in his transformed workshop, now the nerve center of a movement that was spreading across the galaxy. Through the window, he could see humans and aliens working together in the gardens that surrounded the facility. Children from both Earth and other worlds played together, learning each other's languages and customs. His phone buzzed with a message from the Korean president, asking for an update on the galactic situation. Daeho smiled as he typed his response. "We're making progress, one choice at a time." Voss 9's voice spoke softly from the speakers. "The architects would be amazed to see what their design has accomplished. You have not only ended a war, Daeho, You have shown the galaxy that evolution is still possible, even for ancient civilizations. We haven't ended the war yet, Daiho replied, but we've proved that it can be ended. And sometimes proving something is possible is the hardest part. Through the window, he watched a human child teaching an alien child how to use a hammer.